This episode is brought to you by Gazelle, the all-in-one business management software for piano technicians who want to spend less time juggling calendars and more time on themselves and the work they love. Be sure to check out some of Gazelle's newest resources with more than 8 hours of video lessons on learning aural tuning and tuning ergonomics, skills we as technicians use every day. Whether you are growing your skills or your business, Gazelle will help you save time and wow customers. Visit growwithgazelle.com/ProPTN to learn more. I'm McKinley Corbley, and you're listening to the ProPTN podcast, an interview talk show for piano technicians to tune in to what the pros are talking about from across the industry. If you enjoyed today's episode, show us some love by following us on your podcasting platform and leaving us a review. To learn more about us here at the Professional Piano Technicians Network, visit us at proptn.org. Hello and welcome to the show. I'm your host, McKinley, and today we are joined by an innovator for the ages, François Jerome-Vincent. His list of accomplishments as a piano designer, concert technician, and lecturer is quite lengthy, but just to name a few of his recent projects, he has served as a consultant for a number of noteworthy manufacturers and part suppliers, from Ravenscroft to Steinway. He has developed his own line of parts and tools, and he has been teaching classes on piano design around the world. François, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thanks for having me on the show.
Absolutely. Now, to start us off, can you give us a brief overview of your career in piano technology and all the different places it has taken you over the years?
Yes, sure. I did an apprenticeship as a piano technician, mostly on rebuilding pianos and concert work a little. Then I spent about 5.5 years with a French piano maker, Stéphane Paolello, doing rebuilding and making some new instruments also. And I was able to do many things about piano design and engineering at that time, so it was pretty useful for me.
Right. I feel like most technicians start with tuning and regulation. It feels more unusual to start with rebuilding. It's like jumping in the deep end, so to speak. What was that like for you?
Yeah, I think it's mostly because of the workshop I was working at that time. I don't know if you're familiar with the apprenticeship in France, but most of the time we are in the same business for about 4 years. And there is also a school at the same time. But depending on the business, you can do mostly tunings or mostly rebuildings or mostly sales. It depends a lot. So I was in a very small workshop in southwest of France. And the two main activities were actually rebuilding and concert, and to deliver the pianos for the concert also.
So how did you get into piano technology? Were you in a different field before that?
I did what we call the baccalaureate in France, so the degree at 18 years old. And I always played the piano, and actually I started with the violin. And I've been interested by making instruments. I was thinking about making some violin, and maybe someday I will. But that's, yeah. It's kind of a different field, but yeah.
Well, I have to say, I honestly got into piano technology the same way because I was speaking to a luthier who made violins, and he said that making violin bows was actually quite lucrative, and all the supplies you need fit in a little 2x2 foot space. And so, of course, I did the polar opposite and ended up in piano technology. But anyway, so you got the degree, got the apprenticeship, and where did it go from there?
I guess it's just because I met the right person, because I was interested, but, to start on this field, you need to find the right person.
Yes.
The person I met, they loved their job, and so they showed me what they did. So this is how I started. Basically, it's very simple and,
Yeah. Okay, so you started the apprenticeship, you did concert work and rebuilding. Now, did you go to work for Paolello during that time?
A bit later, after this apprenticeship. Okay. First, actually, I spent just 1 year in central France in a Steinway shop to do a little bit of everything, basically, tuning and concert and, just getting a bit better. And then, I don't know really how and why, but it was the good time for Paolello to hire someone. And so I got on board. We knew each other already a little bit because during my apprenticeship, I was interested by many things that my boss at that time or the people I was working with, they couldn't really answer. And in France, when you have questions a bit complicated, many people respond, just talk to Paolello and we'll be fine.
Okay, gotcha. Right. Well, it seems like you must have been getting interested in scaling or something like that. Yeah. Okay.
This is how I started, basically, I think, the scaling first. I wanted to understand why the string breaks sometimes and how can the sound be better also. So that was my first question. And very quickly also the action. It was an important topic during my apprenticeship in France for the exam. We have to do a research or something like that to talk an hour maybe about something that we are interested, basically whatever we want.
Oh, wow.
And my topic was actually action design. I had terrible notation because they didn't understand at all what I was talking about and why. And why. But I didn't care. I didn't care at all. But it's quite funny because I'm still doing it right now. I live with it. And,
right. Well, you teach classes now, so you must be better at the presenting part of things.
Yeah. Yes.
Okay, so did you study engineering and design later?
Yes, a bit later.
Yeah. Okay.
So with Stefan Polello, we talked a lot together about how to design pianos. We talked probably 3 hours every day, just talking, not doing anything else, more than 5 years. So we learned a lot together, I think, because when one of us had an idea, the other had another idea, and it goes.
Yeah,
so
exactly.
It was very, very interesting. So during the apprenticeship in France, we also studied a little bit the very basic of CAD, the computer-aided design. And a bit later, I really wanted to be better, and I really wanted to be able to design a piano on the computer. And that's why a bit later, even after these 5 years with Paolello, I started to study a bit engineering. And this is where I moved to New Zealand for 2.5 years.
Oh, wow.
It was quite nice. I worked there part-time as a piano technician. This is where I bought the software I'm using now. And so there is some kind of training also when we buy this kind of software, and I did that in New Zealand. Actually, it was mostly during the COVID pandemic, so I had nothing else to do.
Right. I always love hearing about what people did over the COVID pandemic because I got into piano technology during the pandemic, and it just seemed like such a ripe time for personal and professional development.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Well, because I was in New Zealand, a wonderful country for many reasons. So I traveled around the country. The borders were closed, but inside the country it was mostly fine. So I traveled a lot, do lots of hiking and photography and many different things other than piano. So.
Well, I'm so jealous because I've always wanted to visit New Zealand. But what was the tuning scene like out there? Were there any differences culturally or professionally between New Zealand and French techs that you noticed?
Yes, this is where I realized that it's so important to have a school in a country, even though in France or even there in Switzerland, we always complain about the schools and there is always something wrong and it's never perfect. The teachers are never perfect. Yeah, okay. But still, it's better to have something, than to have no school. And this is very difficult for Kiwi technicians to find a way to do an apprenticeship, and to find a good business to start with is also very important. They are wonderful piano technicians down there. And if we can do our apprenticeship with them, it's wonderful, but it's a very small country and not many piano technicians, actually not more than 50, I think, for the whole country.
Wow.
And, that's not much. So,
what kind of pianos did you typically work on out there?
In New Zealand, mostly like Europe, a bit more American pianos and a bit more English pianos also, like everywhere else.
Gotcha.
It's not that different.
Gotcha. So you studied CAD in New Zealand and learned a little bit about the scene. And then when you came back, where did it go from there?
Almost 3 years ago now. For many different reasons. I love New Zealand, but I wanted to live closer to my family. And so I created my piano design business in New Zealand. And in my business, we need to travel a lot sometimes. So it's a bit easier when we are in Europe or not the other side of the world. So that's why I came back, and I settled in Lausanne in Switzerland, mostly because I have friends and connection over there and I like the country.
Right, yeah. Now, during those conversations with Mr. Palello, you said you would talk for hours on end. Do you have any highlights or favorite memories or moments from those conversations? Because that sounds like such a meaningful time to share with an expert like that.
Yeah, well, there are many, but what was really amazing with him is that when we have an idea and the idea makes sense, when we both thought that it's good for the piano, we did it always. Whatever it takes, whatever the cost is, whatever, I don't know. Once we finished a rebuilding on a Bechstein, we replaced everything, the action, even the soundboard, I think. But the piano was absolutely great, and we played, he's a good pianist, and we played together the piano, and we just said, well, maybe if we choose another weapon, it will be a little bit better. So
you went back and replaced everything.
Yeah, it makes sense. So we took all the weapons out, and we went back to the beginning and changed the geometry of the action, this kind of thing. The piano is absolutely fine, absolutely amazing. There was absolutely no reason to do that, no reason. But it was interesting, so we did it.
How did it feel after that then?
Better, yeah, a little bit better. After a couple of weeks more work on the piano.
So you both were unafraid of work, unafraid of change.
Yeah.
Awesome. With such a history in engineering and design, can you tell us about when you first started to notice larger issues or problems in piano design that you felt inspired to fix? Contrastly, what are some of the problems that you've been most proud of fixing?
Well, I've been focused a lot on the action. I am a little bit pianist myself, and I like to have the best possible action. And actually, on most of the piano, when you want to repeat note very, very fast, there is always a limit somewhere. And it's never really even also. And I worked a lot on actions because it feels really important to me. I think I started with the scaling, as I said, at the very beginning. But what I'm proud of is probably the work on the action. So I'm completely designing action. This is quite important work for me at the moment. I'm doing it also for rebuildings, for piano technicians who are working on existing piano, not only just brand new pianos. And I created the tools for that. They are very easy to use. And actually, I can design an action and draw it on a computer within a few minutes.
Wow.
It's extremely fast. It was very difficult to create this system, and I spent lots of days, weeks, months to be able to do that. But now it's very easy to do, so I'm very proud of it. Probably I will be the only one to use this kind of software because it's impossible to sell something like that. It's complicated to handle it's not complicated for me because I created it, but for some people who are just using it like this, I guess it would be almost impossible.
And this is the CAD software that you're talking about?
Yeah, but not only the CAD software. But I didn't create the CAD software. This is SolidWorks, basically. It's very common software in engineering. But it's a software made for everything, not for piano, basically, for plane, for aircraft, for cars, for everything, basically. But I created some drawings that I can change very easily from one piano to another. And so this is something you need to create on SolidWorks. And there is a link also with spreadsheets. So when you change something on the spreadsheet, it's automatically changed in SolidWorks also. So that's this kind of connection that I created.
Okay. You said that with pianos played by concert pianists, there's a limit to how much consistency or repetition you can get. As a concert technician, you had the insight as to what was required to make a piano as consistent as possible. And as a pianist, you must have still been able to feel that no matter what you did, it still wouldn't be totally consistent. That must have been really frustrating. How did you contend with that personally?
Yeah, it's difficult. The most common problem we have during concerts, and I'm sure that almost every single piano technician had this experience before. You prepare a piano for a pianist, and sometimes it's too heavy, it's too light, and sometimes the same piano is too heavy for someone and too light for someone else.
Right.
And of course, we have some tricks to adjust that on regulation, but most of the time, when we are working on a concert hall, we don't have time to do that. If we have an hour to tune a piano, it's already pretty cool. I'm glad if I have 1 hour. It's not always like that.
Yeah.
There are very few concert halls that are very organized with like the tuning scheduled and time for the piano technician to work with the pianist. It's mandatory with someone like Sokolov, but because it's Sokolov.
Right.
But with someone else, it's not like that. So we don't have time. And that's why I'm still doing now lots of research to be able to change very, very fast, like in a minute, the touch weight, not like weighting hammers and stuff like that. We don't have time to do that. Just before a concert, It's impossible to weight the hammers or to change the action. Right. It's just not possible. And so I'm working on something like that, yeah.
Do you have any ideas in the works that you're allowed to tell us about?
Well, it's probably a bit too early to describe it, but there are many ideas, many possibilities, but it's an ongoing project.
Ooh, well, I'm excited to hear about it. That's such a novel idea. I've never thought about trying to change the touch weight for a piano for concerts.
That would be great.
That's crazy. Now, I noticed you recently had a hand in rebuilding and redesigning a Pleyel action, and it made me curious as to whether there are any historic piano designs that you particularly like or draw inspiration from.
Yeah, I often help technicians to replace piano action. It's a significant part of my job now. I design or customize about 10 to 15 actions a year, not for myself, but for other people and sometimes for some of my customers. But I'm now working more on design than on the field.
Right.
But I'm not working much on historic piano. Before 1900s, most of the time, I don't really want to, because I think working on a historic piano is a different job. It's completely different.
Yeah.
And also, I don't want to make modification on a pianoforte, like a piano that could be played by Chopin at that time, or indeed I rebuilt the Pleyel. Well, not me, but a friend piano technician, and I designed the action for them. It's a piano from 1890, which is very old, probably the oldest piano with an FJV action at the moment. And I'm not expecting to to go
any earlier.
Yeah. No, most of the time after 1900. But very interesting about historic piano, and the one I really like, and the most impressive pianoforte maker, in my opinion, was Cristofori. Basically, he had crazy ideas for at that time. I mean, the separated soundboard from the rim. In the bass, there is some kind like a shift pedal without a pedal, but you can move the keyboard with the hand on one side or another. The idea, of course, of the escapement, we don't really realize that because it's so obvious for us now, but at that time it was such an idea, such a great idea. And his jack, I studied his action. Well, the three action are a little bit different, but he had the jack already, he had the back check. I mean, everything is there from the very beginning. I'm very impressed by the Cristofori, and I really like the sound also of the copy that I heard and I played, also one of them. It's an amazing pianoforte, in my opinion.
That sounds really special. I've basically no experience with forte pianos. I was curious to know whether you had encountered any of the old Mason and Hamlin string screws.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, that is one of the few historic pianos that I've encountered in the field and actually had a good time with. And then upon taking it to the Pro PTN forums, a lot of people said, yes, save the string screws. Yeah.
Actually, I have a little story about that. It was in New Zealand, in the South Island, in Christchurch. I worked a little bit for a company down there, just for a few weeks. They are good friends. And just before I left New Zealand, it was my last day in Christchurch, and my boss down there told me, okay, François, just stop working for now, and you come with me. We are going to see a piano at a customer's house. And we went there, and I see this Mason and Hamlin with the screws. And this piano was the exact piano that you can see on the movie, the very last Jane Campion movie, The Power of the Dog. I don't know if you watched this film.
I haven't seen it yet.
So only 4 years maybe ago, just basically before I left New Zealand. And this piano was in this movie.
Oh my gosh!
With system. I didn't tune it, but I played a little bit. The piano, it's never been rebuilt except the case. The case was absolutely perfect for the movie, and the keys also, not the piano itself. So I tried to make it playable. There was no let-off on the action because it was completely all over the place. So I did a let-off myself with the fingers, trying to make it sound nicely. But it was kind of a nice experience. And it's a great idea, actually, this system. Yeah. It's just so complicated to create. I was thinking about that for some new pianos, but a piece of wood with just a pin, that's the most simple system you can create. Simple is the best always with piano.
Yeah, well, you had a hand in designing 2 different Ravenscroft models. Can you tell us about that process and your favorite part of those designs?
Yes, actually, we started this collaboration only a few months ago. It's a very new project for me. I met Michael Spreeman and Phoenix in February this year, just because I teach 2 classes in the local chapter and one also in Tucson. And a member of his team came to one of the class, and I'll always use the CAD software to show things. It's very easy, to move the piano in all directions and to show something somewhere. So people really like that. One of the member of his team, just at the end of the class, told me, okay, you need to meet Michael. We are making piano just around the corner. And I said, well, next week I'm supposed to go to Grand Canyon, but I didn't plan that. But okay, let's forget about the Grand Canyon. I will go back there another time. So we met, and a few months later, they showed me the workshop and their concert hall and everything. And a few months later, we started to talk and to design these 2 instruments. Now they want to make their piano in the US with a completely new design for a model 220 and a 278. So they already made the rim of the 220, and I'm working on the frame, the strings layout, every single detail that you need to design when you make a piano. So it's very interesting. Probably I need still at least 6 months to make the frame and everything. So it's an ongoing project and a very long project. But hopefully next year or next 2 years, we'll be able to make first a new 220, and I hope it will be a great piano.
Yeah, that's exciting.
Yeah, it's very exciting.
I also met Michael Spreeman in August for the Renner Academy. And as far as technicians who embody that fearlessness of work and changing something in the last minute just to make it a little bit better, I feel like he embodies that philosophy so well. Such an awesome concert hall, awesome technician. Now, as far as your action design and touch weight programs go, what sets them apart from others on the market? How do you boil down these enormous concepts for the average technician who may be new to it all?
So if you are talking about the spreadsheet available on my website, they are actually very basic one. They are not at all the one I'm using myself to design pianos. They are much more complicated, as I said, impossible to say, otherwise I will explain how it works. So that's just impossible. But I made 2 spreadsheets available, one for hammers data, basically. So it's very easy because you can just put your dimension on your piano into the software, and the software will tell you what is the ideal bored length according to your specification, if you want or if you don't want over-centering. So you need to have some knowledge. That's why there are some articles to explain how to drill hammers and everything. But it's relatively easy, and it's basic spreadsheet, but quite nice. The other one is just basically a help for balancing a keyboard with balance weight and friction and this kind of basic calculation. But I did that just because people ask me to do it. It always starts like that. It's like the hammer protractors. It's the same. I did that because I needed it myself or for my customers, and then some people told me, it's a great idea, you should sell it, don't you think?
Yeah, right, exactly.
One thing to another,
So as far as the classes on your website go, is that to teach how to use the spreadsheets?
Yeah, the one actually available online, it's not for the spreadsheet, but with this class, you can easily use the spreadsheet. Yeah, 1 hour and a half class about basics about action design. It's useful not only for the software, but just when you want to replace an action, when you want to regulate properly an action, or to replace hammers. That's the basic knowledge you need to know. It's the same class I teach in Phoenix this year, and also the same class I will teach next year in Des Moines, Iowa for the next national convention. Not only about the spreadsheet, but about action design overall.
Yes, and for listeners at home, those articles are on proptn.org if you want to check them out. Now, for the class in Iowa, should technicians expect to have some amount of prior experience or some skill level before attending the class?
Well, in my opinion, it should be one of the first class when you start an apprenticeship. Well, this is my opinion, but of course...
You did start with rebuilding, yeah.
Yeah. But it's not complicated at all, basically. So I think everyone should be able to listen to it. There is nothing really complicated. But if you are interested about piano actions and how piano action is supposed to work, how you are supposed to do a regulation, it's already quite useful. If you want to do action replacement or rebuilding, it's even more useful for you, but it's probably for everyone.
And speaking of learning and commiserating, hello, this is McKinley from the editing room again, just to remind you that if you have not already signed up for a ProPTN subscription, you're seriously missing out. Whether you need articles from our Beginner's Corner to help supplement your students' education, or if you're a seasoned tech who wants a refresher on certain specialty skills, ProPTN has got you covered with peer-reviewed editorial content, video demonstrations, and photographed step-by-step instructionals. On top of that, the collection is our online marketplace that is a must for maintaining your tool collection. If you want to try a tuning lever before you buy it, you can check out our Rent-A-Lever program. If you make and design your own tools, you can sign up to distribute them through the collection. If you're a retiring technician, we can sell your tool collection on consignment, or you can just go shopping for a whole selection of new and used tools from brands and technicians you trust. ProPTN also maintains a Discord forum where us technicians can commiserate about experiences in the field, share tool tips and tricks, and ask for insights from our peers. All of this and more for just $65 a year. Let me tell you, I have spent $65 on so many more ridiculous purchases and tools I never ended up using, but ProPTN has been an invaluable resource for its members since the get-go. We also have student memberships for the Greenhorn, but for all others, what are you waiting for? Go sign up now, and you'll thank me later. Anyway, back to the show. Now, the spreadsheets that you mentioned, if you worked with Michael Spreeman, I'm not sure if you would have used Nick Gravagne's program, but if so, how might your program be different than his, if there are any differences at all?
Yeah, actually, Nick is kind of a colleague because we are both working with Ravenscroft. But I've never seen his program, honestly. I think it's mostly on balancing and where to put the leads, etc. The one on my website is nothing complicated. It's just you put your down weight, your up weight, and the program just calculates the balance weight, the friction. And if you want to change the balance weight, he will tell you what is the down weight and the up weight you are supposed to use for this key. Right. And that's it, pretty much. Yeah. Probably the one from Nick is more advanced for these kind of things.
I think it covers a lot more with general action design. So if you enter the action spread and blow distance and those kinds of measurements, it would say, well, if you move the capstan or the knuckle this many millimeters, it'll change up weight and down weight by this much. Mm-hmm. So with the Renner Academy, they didn't talk about weighing off with leads at all. It was just based on changing those specific measurements.
Yeah, actually, that's the part of the software I'm not selling at the moment. Maybe, I don't know. We will see. Actually, I have something just for piano design and action design, and I have several spreadsheets like that. But with me, there is a link with SolidWorks always because it's so convenient to use this software. And so if I want to make something available for everyone, I can't make SolidWorks available for everyone. Right, it's, I don't know, $10,000 software, maybe even more, just the software. And then it's completely empty. And so you need to create everything. So I can't make that available. And I don't want to make something without this software at the moment because it's so convenient for me. And I really like to work like that. It's, in my opinion, the best way ever to work with piano. You know, you have your piano and your action in 3 dimensions. You can weight the part if you like. It's just one click, basically.
Yeah.
If you want to weight your front lever, this is one click.
Yeah.
Not more complicated. So, very convenient. But we will see. Maybe someday I will create something for every piano technician. I don't know. There are lots of ongoing projects for tools and stuff. So I don't know. We will see.
We'll be patient then. We can be patient. What have been some of the biggest aha moments that you've helped inspire in manufacturing workshops? Or at least what are some of the most noteworthy moments that you're allowed to tell us about?
Well, there are many, but recently, to talk about the most recent project, I had two different companies here in Switzerland who wanted to replace an action on these two Blüthners where the patent action. So if you are familiar with this special action, very special Blüthner action from the beginning of the 20th century. And the problem is at the moment in Europe, it's quite difficult to make keyboard. There is only one keyboard maker, Klug, and we need like 2 years or something to get a keyboard, so it's complicated. So I said, okay, if you really want to replace the action, maybe we can keep the keyboard and put a new action. But it's not that simple because on the Blüthner patent action, the Blüthner shanks are not straight and parallel to each other, and so the keys are not straight and parallel where the capstan is supposed to be.
I see.
So if I want to keep the keyboard, the only possibility I have is to do the exact same thing, to install a weapon. There is no real weapon on the patent action. So I can install a weapon and a hammer, but they will not be parallel to each other.
Okay, I see.
It's like a fan when you look at the action from the top. I think there are some chickering also from the 19th century. We have an action a little bit like that. But the only possibility, if we want a modern action on this kind of piano, we need like a very special action stack. And so I had to create another spreadsheet for that and to be able to, like with lots of equation and stuff.
Right, yeah.
And then it's made with a CNC. And the screws of the hammers, they are not on a straight line, for example. It's a curve also. And that's the same for the weapon. It's like they are not on one line. It's also like, I don't know if how to describe. But yeah, I think you know pretty much what I mean. They are angled, all of them.
Yes. I saw a picture of it on your Instagram, and I was so curious about how you accomplished that. I really wanted to ask about it. They were placed at an angle on the whipping rail. Yeah. How did you accomplish that? Did you have to use wedges or a custom action rail?
Special action rail, and the weapon and the shanks, they are completely normal.
Wow.
I'm working only on the rail, but it means that there is one angle for one key, for one hammer, and so for one weapon. So they are all different. So it's relatively complicated to create. Yeah. So there are lots of maths, basically, but when the spreadsheet is done, it's not that complicated. The drawing is made quite easily after the spreadsheet. And thanks to my friend in France who can make the action rail with a CNC, he's actually a pianoforte maker also, Benjamin Renou in Alsace. And he's pianoforte maker, but he has got a CNC, which is, sounds crazy a bit, but... But thanks to him, I can get my action rails exactly as I want. He's making all the action rails for my actions, not only the Blüthner, but all of them. So it's pretty cool.
Sounds like it. I was wondering about that. Now, what are some of the biggest, most common issues you see manufacturers contending with in their design and development? Contrastly, what are your biggest pet peeves in piano design?
You are going to be a bit surprised, but the most annoying thing to make and to design on a piano, in my opinion, they are the fold board and the music desk. I hate them.
Wow!
It's so annoying. It's so annoying. And it's never really very well made by the factory. If you are looking very closely, even the position of the fold board, the shape of the fold board, even on brand new pianos, very expensive piano, I noticed some big problems there that they tried to hide. But it's very annoying, actually.
You know, I just had an experience where I had to ask Indrik, the head of Estonia Pianos, why the music desk guide rail was always in the way of the A0 tuning pin. And he said, it's actually because it comes off. And sure enough, he just took the whole thing off. And I'm like, man, I wish I would have known that before, because otherwise there's nothing that would make me think it was an adjustable music desk. But what makes it such a pain in the butt to make?
For the music desk, the part is moving. So when it moves, it means that the two pins on both sides should be exactly at the right height, and also the position forward, backward, Otherwise, if there is a little difference there, when you close the fold board, it's not going to be straight. It's going to touch one side or another. It's going to touch the rim or something. So that's one problem. Then it should not touch the keys, normally the black keys when you close it. And there are few pianos with problems like that, especially upright, actually, with the music desk inside the foldboard. So this is one problem. Then when it's closed, the space at the top should be even everywhere. When it goes up, normally the position should be even compared to the black keys everywhere. And everything is covered with polyester, which is something not at all accurate. We have no idea the thickness of the polyester. It's always... we don't know exactly. So, when you polish the polyester and then you need to put the foldboard back in the instruments, sometimes it's not working. And if you try to replace a foldboard, I had to do that recently with a brand new Steinway from Hamburg. And the people damaged the polyester and it was too much to repair it. And so we just asked, can we just replace the foldboard? They said, yes, but you need to send back the original. We make a copy and then we send the new one back to you. They can't just send a brand new foldboard like that. It's unique for every piano, every single piano, because that's mostly because we are working with wood and polyester, basically. If we were working with something else, with metal or anything, something like that, it will be fine, I guess. But,
it's finicky, So do you have a favorite foldboard design?
Well, not really, but I like, you don't have that in the US, but in Hamburg, on Hamburg Steinway, their very last system to slow the foldboard, they used some kind of gear on both sides. Actually, you can't take out the cheek blocks easily like before. They are kind of stuck with these gears. And so it's pretty great and it's working just fine. You can't see it also. There is nothing on top of the cheek blocks like on some pianos.
Steinway cheek blocks have always driven me kind of insane, to be honest. Having to take them out with the foldboard always driven me insane. So what are some of your biggest dreams for inventions or innovations that you'd like to create in the future?
Well, there are many, but one of them I would like to, I did it already, but I would like to make it available for everyone, which is difficult. A few years ago, I created a completely digital hammer boring jig. And it's very nice because you move the part, you have a screen with the values for the broad length, the angle, the rake, everything.
Wow.
Just on a screen, it's so cool, but because I made only one, for me, it's relatively expensive to make. So just the cost of the making for me was twice the price of hammer boring jig that you can buy everywhere. So that's a problem.
Weren't you looking at making it with ceramic as well, though?
I don't know. Now it's going to be made with some kind of steel, but with a system to read the values. And, I guess if we make 1,000 of them in China, it will be fine. But if we want to make something in Europe or in the US with small quantities, because we can't sell thousands of them, it's going to be probably a bit expensive. And I am working on it to be able to make it available. It means that it needs to be supplied by, Jan or someone like that. And so they need to make money also with it. So the price should be acceptable for everyone. It's not easy at all to make a tool working and available for everyone. So hopefully maybe next year it's going to be ready.
We'll keep an eye out for it then,
Well, I'm also working on a tool only for myself, and it's a life project because I'm sure it's possible to have a tool that can create a full piano just by giving some values, like just the size, the number of keys, and that's it pretty much.
Wow.
I think it's possible, but it's complicated. So next 20 years or 30 years, it will be ready.
Okay, we'll have you back in 200 episodes.
Sure.
To ask how it's going. Okay, Now, you've also made your own branded line of parts, including hammer shanks, which use 3D printing and ball bearings. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Basically, what I'm making now, they are the action brackets, action stacks, custom made, whatever the shape, whatever the flanges you want to use. Basically, we can make a stack for every single part and action and pianos. Also with separated let-off button, if we want. And the brackets, they are made with aluminium and black anodized, so it's quite nice. I made back check. They are used by Wayne Stewart in Australia on his very, very last piano. There are one in the US, actually. This piano is in the US, in Chicago, with 112 keys.
Wow.
Delivered in June this year, my back check on it. This is something we developed together. Wayne is, he's an amazing piano maker, probably the best piano maker on earth at the moment, in my opinion. He's completely crazy, but he's great.
Okay, noted. I feel like you have to be a little bit crazy to work in this field, so yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I was also intrigued by the shape of your back checks. Can you tell us the motivation behind that design?
Wayne is quite focused on the sound of the back check. Actually, there is an impact on the sound, a little impact, but still, for some reason, it changed a little bit the sound. We made lots of tests, lots of tests and prototypes. On his piano, we tried every single back check available on the market, from WNG to Renner to whatever. And of course, for us, it's obvious, not for all the piano makers, but the idea with the back check is to make them very, very stiff and very short, also as short as we can, and with very stiff wires also. So we made very stiff wires, very short. And with this back check that we created together, the idea was, first of all, to get the best sound. And of course, we wanted to catch the hammer at half an inch, even when we play fortissimo, we play very loud. So we did lots of prototype, and with this material and with this shape, we had very good result. And so we used it on his very last 112 key piano that is in Chicago. And we wanted also something very, very strong. We tried the usual plastic one that are on the market actually, and when you screw them a little bit too much, they immediately pop up. And I asked him to try to break my back check, and he said that he couldn't.
Wow.
So yeah.
Now, for all the listeners at home who might not know, can you walk us through why the shorter back check is so important?
So when I say short, so there is the back check itself and
the wire,
and so everything should be as short as possible, because when the head of the back check is very short, you can move it very close to your hammer, and there is no risk of rubbing.
Right.
Even when you play fortissimo. Also, the shape of the tail is extremely important, of course. We worked a lot on this.
Right.
Also, the wire, it's a lever. So when you push at the very top, if the lever is very short, it's going to be harder to push. And
right.
It's going to be more accurate when you play very loud. So that was the idea.
Gotcha. Now, as far as the ball bearing shanks go, how does the pinning or the friction work with that? How does the maintenance work with that?
Yeah, that's an ongoing project. And at the moment, there are no piano with these ball bearings. We made some prototype and research. There is a huge impact on the sound also. And the idea is to have no maintenance at all, if possible. But we don't know at the moment. It's too early to say if ball bearings, hammers are going to be marketed someday.
I see.
We need to do lots of tests and everything. That's the same problem like with the hammer boring jig also. We need to create something that we can make easily at a relatively low price. It's quite challenging, even when you find a good solution for something, then can you actually do it?
Yeah.
With hundreds of parts, and it's not that simple.
Yeah,
it's not that
exactly.
simple. But we are working on it. Yeah, we will see someday.
Well, one of the training courses you currently advertise on your website is about back action design. Can you give us a sneak peek into that class by telling us about some of the typical problems on existing systems and how technicians can weigh the pros and cons of using spoons?
Yeah, actually, I did this class twice in Switzerland and in Arizona. I love this subject, dampers. I love to put dampers in the piano. It's one of my favorite jobs.
Of course it is. Oh, my gosh. Not for me. Never for me.
Well,
at all.
actually, you just need to, practice a lot, and
I know.
There is only one secret: is just to practice a lot. Then it comes easily. But yeah, that's a bit annoying at the beginning. You spend 3 days, 4 days on a piano; it's still very bad, and
yeah. Well, I asked a friend of ours who was on the show, what is the best way for beginning technicians to be able to tell if their mentor is a good technician or not? And he said, check their damper work. If it's good and consistent, then they're probably a good technician.
Yes, that's very true.
I have thought that ever since.
Absolutely.
It's such a good point.
Yeah, absolutely. There are not many technicians who really like that. So that's always the work we don't want to do, and we don't even quote for it. But well, I like it, and I think there is a lot to do there, even to improve the design of the back action. We've got many problems with the sustain pedal. It's quite important for the pianist, very, very important. And, it's almost never perfect. When you release the pedal slowly, there are always some ring, some little noise, not very nice. And apparently the piano makers are also interested because...
Hi there, McKinley from the editing room. Just to let you know that in order to protect us and our stakeholders from any legal trouble, we have redacted and censored the name of the piano brand, which Francois describes in this next segment. We thank you for your understanding, and now back to the show.
They created some kind of new sustain pedal, fancy sustain pedal. The system is exactly the same as the one they made before, exactly the same. There's not a single difference. I measure all the parts, all the levers, everything. It's absolutely identical. But there are two differences. First of all, it's 5,000 bucks more expensive.
Okay, all right.
So this is one good reason to make it.
Okay.
And I'm kidding a little bit, but there is a difference, but not on the design of the damper system, not at all, but on the way they adjust the dampers. Basically, to make it simple, they depress the pedal to about 1/8 of the movement, and they try, so the dampers are moving just a little bit, a tiny little bit from the strings, and then they plug the strings. And basically, they are doing a little bit like hammer string mating.
Right.
It's a bit the same idea, because they plug the strings and they try to get the same sound for every string. And so their idea is to work on everything they can to make this sound even everywhere. It makes sense, actually. But of course, it takes probably ages to do, and that's why it's more expensive. But
do you notice a difference in how it sounds?
Yes, on a brand new piano, probably a little bit. The problem is what is going to happen next 2 years,
Right.
Because nothing is different, basically. Just the work on the felt and the regulation, but the regulation, you know what it is.
Yeah.
In 2 years, that's it pretty much. So your $5,000, enjoy it for the next 2 years when you buy a piano. And it's not on every piano. You need to ask for it. It's more expensive. So I think it's only on 2 models. Yeah, so it's not my solution, not at all, but it shows at least that they are preoccupied with the back action. And they probably have the worst back action on the market, to be honest.
Yeah.
No one complains about Yamaha or Kawaii's dampers. Never. But on it's all the time.
Right. Yeah.
So there are different things to think about. Not only, of course, the regulation, and it's extremely important. And whatever the design actually is on your piano, you must be able to adjust your dampers and make it work. But it's a good example on the things that you can improve, because basically everything. The damper wires, they are not perfectly vertical. There is an angle there. So this is something that we can work on. For example, my own a few years ago, it was very old. So because of this wire is not vertical, I wanted to change that. But of course, it's easy to understand. There are only 2 ways to make this damper wire vertical. You can move the back action forward to the pianist, or you can move the damper guide rail backward. The problem is, if you do that, you need to replace your guide rail because this is a cross-string piano.
Right.
So the spacing are not going to be the same. And of course, because I like the easiest solution, this is what I did. I moved the
Okay, all right.
And so the wires are a little bit closer to the soundboard, so you need to be very careful. There are not much space, but this is what I did. I replaced the guide rail, and I drilled them a little bit backward, about a millimeter or so, I can't remember. And it's way better. It's working way better than...
Well, good. I'm glad to hear that.
Lots of technicians, they are going to say, yes, we know that, but we do that on purpose. Yeah. I know that it's a bad idea anyway. If you make this modification, it's still better. So if you do that on purpose or not, I don't mind much. I want it to be better.
Right.
So,
Right.
And it's one of the things we can improve. There are also, of course, the spacing of the damper levers. You can't work much on the spacing of the holes of the guide rail, of course, because it depends on the strings, so you can't do much there, but you can change a little the spacing on the damper levers if you are using spoon, because if you want to reduce the angles of the damper wire, not on every piano, but on many pianos, you can just move the damper levers perfectly in front of the guide rail, and then you bend your spoon and not the damper wire. It's way easier to bend the spoon,
Right, yeah, 100%, yeah.
Many piano makers did that, actually. Mm-hmm. And of course, the ratios, like the ratio of the pedal compared to the dampers need to move about 4 millimeters up, so you can work on the ratio with the pedal, also with the key. Yeah, there are lots of things to think about with the dampers. Very interesting.
Out of curiosity, have you used Rick Baldison's 3-in-1 damper underlever kit?
Yes, with the capstan on the tray. Yeah. I used I make it myself, but I made also some back action with the capstan directly in the tray. It's easy to do with the CNC to drill the capstan and everything. So it's a great idea, and to be able to change it easily, it's very good.
Well, since you've partnered up with ProPTN, there are now 2 of your articles on action geometry and part selection on the website. Can you tell us about any more exciting content that we can expect to see from this partnership?
Yeah, there is another article about hammer traveling and squaring that should be published soon on ProPTN, featuring some videos made after drawings, because with my CAD software, I can move the parts also. So I really like that. It's very easy to show someone things with the drawing, because on the reality, you never know how the parts are exactly.
Yeah.
And on a drawing, it's always perfect. If you want it to be perfect, it's perfect. It's drawing, so it's very easy to show, like when the hammer raise and the traveling is correct or not. So I made a few videos like that, showing the traveling and squaring.
McKinley from the editing room here again, just letting you know that article has been published, and you can go read it right now on proptn.org. Back to the show. Well, all good things must come to an end, and as much as I feel like I could pick your brain literally forever, this has been such a stupendous interview. We must get to our final question, which is, what is your favorite part of piano technology and your favorite tool?
Probably my favorite tool, at least my favorite hardware tool that I made, it's probably the angle of boring protractors, and this set of 3 tools that I made to measure the angle of boring, the rake, and the angle of the strings compared to the shank, with a fake hammerhead that you can adjust facing the strings and then use the protractor to measure it. It's available from Erwin in the US and Jan or Taffin in Europe, and also in Australia now. It's going to be available soon in Australia from Australia Piano Supply, and I kind of like that because it solves the problem that I had for ages and couldn't find any proper tool to do that. So, and my favorite part of piano technology, I guess what I like the most is creating something. And in ancient Greek, the word creating means poien in Greek. Poien, this is the roots of the word poetry. So creating is tied with poetry, and so I kind of like the idea of creating something,
God.
There is a close link with poetry.
That is the most beautiful answer I've heard to that question. And if you don't mind me saying, that's also very French of you. But it's so beautiful. I love that answer. Oh my gosh.
Thanks.
Wow. Well, Francois, you've been such a stupendous guest. Thank you so much for joining us on this interview.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Lovely to talk to you.
Another huge thank you to Gazelle for becoming our first ever podcast sponsor. Now, if you'd like to check out any of Francois's tools, parts, classes, or materials, you can visit his website at pianodesign.ch, or you can check out his Instagram at fjv.pianodesign. I will also be linking to his ProPTN articles, which we mentioned in this episode, in the show notes. Otherwise, we'll catch you in the new year, listeners.